we have different array of speakers representing different organizations. So we have some people who are in social entrepreneurship, we have a business, we have a private foundation doing a great deal with younger generation in Ukraine. We have a representative of a think tank, and we also have some volunteer organizations. So we will be touching upon different topics throughout our discussion. And I would like you to encourage to participate in this discussion and come up with some questions. But before that, we will have each one of the speakers to briefly speak on the topic they've chosen within the the general topic of our panel. And I suggest the following sequence. I would like to kindly ask Piotr Marchevsky to be the first speaker, and he represents Thomson Reuters, and this is one of the key partners of the conference. We're very happy to have you here, Piotr. So I understand you've been 15 years with the company. Before that, you worked a little bit more. Before that, you worked as a journalist. We're educated internationally, so we're very happy to have you here. So the floor is yours. Okay.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I think I'll stand up because the slides are behind me and it would be very difficult to refer to them if I can't see them. So I'll step a little bit to the side from the panel, if you don't mind. Thank you for this very kind introduction. You know more about me than I thought you do, so that's always an encouraging thing. So ladies and gentlemen, I guess first of all thank you to the conference organizers for the opportunity to present to you. And just to quickly reflect on sort of the way the day has gone for us. We started by looking at some very high-level geopolitical risk. We talked about corruption as a factor in doing business. And then we dove into some specific topics in the plenary. We talked about a very promising industry in agriculture. We talked about the energy industry and the challenges that that industry is facing. And I thought this afternoon it would be useful to go in the direction of so what? So what can we do about it? What can companies, what can startups, what can businesses, what can protect investors, how they can protect themselves? And I think the NGOs also play a vital role in enabling it. A very brief introduction of Thomson Reuters. You probably know a little bit of us, and you know us through the Reuters news brand. That's sort of the crown jewel in our business, and you probably recognize in this way we've been active in Ukraine for over 150 years, so a tremendous legacy. And if you just reflect for a second on Reuters, our values are trust, immediacy, objectivity in reporting. So these are very strong roots that we're building into different areas of business in which we operate. And those areas are financial, where we service the financial community. Many of the investors here use our services for information, for transaction platforms. And we actually have a little stand in the foyer. You can look at the prices from Ukraine. You can look at the prices of crops, of different energy products. So it's actually quite relevant to what we heard earlier. We also run businesses in providing information software solutions for lawyers. We operate under brands of Westlaw, Practical Law Company. Some of those might sound familiar. Tax and accounting services for tax and accounting professionals. News I already talked about, and risk. And the thing that I would like to major on right now is actually that risk business and the governance, risk and compliance service. Hang on, I think I've clicked a little bit. Okay. So what is this risk business of Thomson Reuters all about? It is about providing information and protecting our customers, helping them with governance, compliance processes. And I'll give you a few examples in a couple of minutes. We started this journey for us approximately 15 years ago. And to give you an idea, 15 years ago, we started collecting. We observed that our customers, professional communities, are facing a lot of regulatory changes. And at that time, we started collecting regulatory changes for the compliance officers in financial institutions. And the range of this was the compliance officer in a financial institution was facing off to 10 regulatory changes. And we were collecting data from 100 different regulators around the world. And there were 10 pieces of regulation a day that a compliance officer would need to analyze. So no doubt they needed a professional service to get on top of that. But the world has moved on, and over these years, we now reached a stage that we collect regulatory changes from 600 institutions around the world. And the rate of change is 200 different regulatory changes a day. So that's what a compliance officer is responsible. If you're running a global company and you're responsible for compliance, for making sure that your business stays compliant across 100+ countries, you need to be on top of 200 regulatory changes a day. So that's where we come in, and that's how we help customers and provide them with those trusted answers. That is sort of our brand slogan, if you like. We give some data here on the slide. How many customers, to give you an idea, 45 of the world's top 100 corporations are customers. 49 of the top 50 banks are our customers in this business, right? So it's a very successful business for us, and we're clearly helping customers being on top of the regulatory agenda. A couple of very quick examples now relating this story to Ukraine. How can Ukraine approach, and how can the professional community in Ukraine approach the subject of being competitive, right? So in this model, which was an analysis of global financial centers, and this is the Global Financial Centers Index, these are sort of the 5 different buckets that are relevant to drive competitiveness of a financial center, right? It's about business environment, human capital, infrastructure, sector development, and reputation. And if you think about the topics we discussed earlier, if you think about the topic of corruption and how we tackle corruption, how we fight corruption, that's very intertwined in all of these categories. So it needs to be tackled very seriously. To back it up with some data, a couple of very quick charts. The one on the left comes from Transparency International, and the one from the right comes from the World Bank. And basically what it shows is, if you want to be a credible, global, successful financial center, you need to put a lot of effort into either decreasing corruption perception, right, or increasing your control of corruption, right? These are sort of different factors. So I guess the simple point of this slide is, if you want to be successful, you need to tackle corruption really professionally. And there is tools, there is ways of doing this, and that's what I'm going to show you in a second. So that's an example of an anti-corruption process that we consult our customers on, how to tackle corruption within a corporation, how to make sure that you create mechanisms and processes to protect your entity, your economic entity, from those negative processes, from those negative activities. Tone from the top, setting technologies and services, setting methodology, on-site training. So it's a blend of leadership, of process, of education, and very much technology tools. And that's another little nuance. I told you about this rate at which regulation is coming and compliance officers need to approach it. We are at a phenomenally interesting point in time, because if you look what happened after the 2008 financial crisis, a lot of financial institutions have tackled a subject of compliance by throwing people at it. I was speaking to someone recently who told me that the City of London, after the 2008 crisis, created 125,000 new compliance-related jobs in the financial industry. So the banks have shifted over this very short period of time. If you think at the history of the banking industry, the banks have shifted from being run by traders to being run by compliance officers. So this process is really advancing. By why it is I said it's a very exciting point in time, is because the banks and financial institutions are realizing that they can't do it anymore. They can't keep throwing people at the problem. An esteemed colleague of mine, David, who runs our financial and risk business, told me an anecdote that the way he observes activity in the trading rooms of the main global banks at the moment is that for every single person that produces or is a customer, there is 3 or 4 people watching what they do at the moment, right? He says it's like you're driving a car and there is a policeman sitting next to you and 2 or 3 sitting behind you watching every step you of the journey you make. So it's not sustainable. And now what's happening, and that's what's very exciting, it's very exciting for us business-wise, but it's also very exciting for, I guess, everyone in the room, is we're starting to deploy technology. You definitely heard about terms such as fintech, regtech. Technology is coming to tackle those challenges, and we're right in the middle of it. So that's the way that you can segment those anti-corruption processes and deploy technology, educate your teams, and tackle the challenge. Some of the typical activities in which we would help, and I guess these are your challenges. You can do this with Thomson Reuters help, for example, and these are creating a code of conduct. Do you have in your corporation a very firm and clear code of conduct? Do you have a mechanism to educate your people on code of conduct? Do you have a mechanism of checking whether they understood it? Compliance policies and procedures, training and communication programs. We have a lot of different partners in Ukraine where we talk about using our platform to deliver compliance learning and make sure that certain members of the financial community have been certified. And finally, hotline whistleblowing, so creating software mechanisms and processes within companies to tackle those. I personally really like this model. Maybe it's because it's very simple. That's the model of 3 lines of defense model. So that's what we say every corporation needs to embrace. The first line of defense is about your operational management. This is where you check who you do business with. You check who your key people are on your management board, perhaps. This is where you check who your partners are, who your customers are. The second line of defense is about your risk management process. It's about having procedures in place, having compliance, really robust mechanism, you learning for your staff, these sort of things. And the third one is the third line of defense, which really is around internal audit. This is about inspection. This is about checking whether bad things are not happening in your business. As you would suspect from our Thomson Reuters standpoint, we have a different list of products, propositions that help customers tackle these several lines of defense. Some of those products we have in the foyer, so I invite you to join us. My team is here. They can show you what it really looks like, how it feels. I just have a couple of screenshots. This is World Check. This is our database. Again, started, I think 15 years ago, we started World Check. One of the Swiss banks requested a list of financial terrorists and politically exposed people. They want to know who their customers are, to know where they are exposed, so that if things such as Panama Leaks happen, they are clean. They know that they don't do business with those people, and that they know this in advance by monitoring their client list proactively all the time. That's what financial institutions do these days, and WorldCheck is right in the middle of that process. Customers include governments, include security agencies. How many records in the WorldCheck database? More than 3 million. So it's more than 3 million names, and if you want to have a look at it, come to see us at our stand. Enhanced due diligence. This is a little bit more in-depth. So this is not just about lists of names. This is where we can create a more in-depth analysis on particular individuals. Some of the governments who are our customers monitor. I know one particular example to give you an illustration. One of the European countries monitors everyone who applies for residence permit in that country using our enhanced due diligence reports, right? And they check what is the source of wealth of that individual, because they don't want people coming to their country and just setting up residents who have disputable source of wealth. Very powerful tool, and again, we are in discussions here in Ukraine with different counterparties who could benefit from it. In corporate environment, corporations use this to validate board members, right? They use this to validate board members in acquisition targets. So the use cases are quite diverse. Final couple of slides. This is the Enterprise Risk Manager. This is a software package that basically helps you tackle that second line of defense, right? So this is the software package that helps you if you're a big corporation, helps you run the process. I like the gentleman in the last panel from solar energy company who said every risk can be managed. In fact, in business, if you don't take risks, there's no business without risk. I absolutely agree with that, and that just illustrates one of the ways in which you can manage your risks deploying software. And finally, auto audit, the third line of defense. We have one particular very premium customer here in Ukraine. I think I can mention this, yes, from the local team. National Bank of Ukraine is right at this time deploying our auto audit solution for audit. This is a software package that helps our customers typically run their internal audit process. That's the introduction from Thomson Reuters. Keen to answer any of your questions, either here or in the foyer. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Piotr. Thanks for your introduction of your products, and definitely compliant companies eradicating corruption are those which are sustainable and maintain a high level of corporate social responsibility. That's definitely there. But now I would like to actually invite Peter Zalmayev to share some of his insights and experience of working in Ukraine as well as in Central Asia and the Caucasus. Peter has been a director of Eurasia Democracy Initiative, which is an international nonprofit organization promoting democracy and human rights. He was educated at Columbia University, lived in the US for a while, and now has been living in Kyiv, I guess, for over a year or two, if I'm not mistaken. So Peter, the floor is yours. Here we go.
Vasil, we're going to exhaust our male component from Piotr to Peter, and then we'll turn it over to the ladies, who will have probably much more interesting things to say than I. So very quickly, yes, my background, I come from a human rights background. I joined one of the major human rights organizations in New York back in the late 90s, International League for Human Rights, one of the oldest such organizations, and our portfolio included some campaigns that we helped jumpstart that had a direct relevance and bearing on the issue of CSR, such as blood diamonds, the extraction of blood diamonds in Sierra Leone, and the involvement of Western companies, and that pretty much put an end to that sort of complicity. We also were very much involved in the issue of child labor on cotton fields of Uzbekistan. We partnered with Human Rights Watch on that particular issue, and throughout the years back during my stint at ILHR, and now in my present capacity, I have engaged off and on with various United Nations entities, such as the Committee on the Rights of the Child and Committee to Eliminate Discrimination Against Women when it comes to issues of relevance to our panel. Now we are considering, my organization, the Eurasia Democracy Initiative, we're considering entering into partnerships with local civil society players on issues of civic responsibility, CSR. And we're very grateful to have this opportunity to speak here, to have met Alex and other folks at the Empire State Capital Partners, who have tremendous interesting ideas that will be discussed later that I'm very excited about. And so just a few remarks about my impressions, especially post-Maidan. This is when my organization has been quite active in Ukraine. That's starting in summer 2014. A lot of my colleagues from North America and from Western Europe, diaspora folks, whatever you call expats, they have moved back to Ukraine, and they've assumed positions in the government to try to bring introduce greater accountability and Western practices into the government making and into the work of corporations here, often taking a significant cut in their salaries, often providing essentially free labor, and that has been a mixed success on all levels, of course, as you know. They have been active in promulgating new legislature for the the country. They've been active in anti-corruption efforts, and they've been quite instrumental in the National Anti-Corruption Agency that exists as a result. A lot of companies, a lot of their efforts have gone to helping the Ukrainian corporations in dealing with the aftermath of the war in eastern Ukraine and the continuing crisis as a result of that, helping with the anti-terrorist organization, anti-terrorist operation in the east, and working with demobilized soldiers. And I think there's several things that could be said that I think can be chalked up as successes in that area. Just to list a few, I can mention that after serious NGO pressure, a law was passed here in Ukraine that prohibits companies from firing employees 3 years before retirement. That's something that's quite notable. I think in 2017, that's another very important development. 53 Ukrainian companies have signed the UN Global Compact, which is a voluntary initiative based on CEO commitments to implement universal sustainability principles. And finally, there's this so-called green platform that's been instituted by the government to try to make the Ukrainian economy greener. Overall, since 2015, as you know, the foreign direct investment, somewhat paradoxically, has improved. There's been an increase in FDI to the tune of 17%, 45% of which has come from the EU market. Contrary to hopes, but probably logically, most foreign investors, unfortunately, have not paid sufficient attention to the need to enforce CSR practices here in Ukraine while establishing their businesses. And that's probably part of the reason that Ukraine can be attractive to foreign partners, because such standards here are lax. So that's kind of a vicious circle. But I think that the major component that's missing here vis-a-vis foreign direct investment is the government's reluctance to come up with a national strategy of CSR. It's something that is sorely missing, and it's something that you will see in every report of every organization here that deals with the issue, and that is the lack of that comprehensive strategy from the government. So it's for as long as Ukraine lacks this strategy, the CSR platform, then we can only talk about limited progress in this area. And in that respect, there have been some very good examples for Ukraine, including countries of Northern Europe, the Nordics. They've been very active in working with local civil society, including specifically Norway and Sweden. These countries have often been held up as paragons of social responsibility and promotion. They're known for their so-called Nordic way of sustainability. Then, like I said, they've been very, very important in promoting the CSR mindset here in Ukraine. Some companies here have engaged in the practice of greenwashing, which is, I think, a very pernicious and major problem, and that basically means feigning or pretending to have interest in corporate social responsibility and passing certain environmental regulations, passing them off as CSR practices, whereas in a normal country, if you will, they would just merely constitute the price of admission. So some of these happen, they occur, and that is a serious problem. And the major corporations, big enterprises here, practice that very thing. And I'd like to move and say a few words about some of my personal experiences here as well. First of all, I'd like to say that the EU has been a much greater partner of Ukrainian civil society on the issue of CSR than the US for several reasons. But let me just say that the EU goes back to 2006, I think, when it comes to CSR, and it's a very new muscular approach in the issue, when in 2006 it passed the so-called Guidance on Social Responsibility, which the European Commission adopted. And at the same time, I think the US, America, where I come from, struggles when it comes to CSR, and more so than the EU countries. And I'm ashamed to say, mention some of the examples that you're all familiar with: Monsanto, a major agricultural company and some of its practices that have been demonized in the press. You're probably all familiar with the accident in the United Airlines, passenger being dragged off the plane. I think some of these are symptomatic of the larger, processes that we see happening in the United States. I think that the new administration, the new American president, is a very questionable friend to CSR concerns, as someone who was known for very, very shady business practices back when he was, and still is, a big-time developer and landlord. He was known to engage in racial profiling. He was known to have engaged with a series of very questionable enterprises in, let's say, Azerbaijan, as was noted in a recent report in the New Yorker magazine. And so I think Donald Trump is someone who is not instinctually drawn to this issue, and that translates into absence of the kind of pressure that we have come to expect from the U.S., coupled with the promised reduction in soft power projects from the U.S. To the tune of 60-something%, which would include entities such as USAID, that does not portend well for the civil society. So this is a difficult climate, I would say, for our concern here in Ukraine. And as someone who's been spending half his time in Kyiv now, I see that the city, the country, they're crying out for companies to come up with creative solutions to a whole host of issues and crises that we're facing here. The garbage crisis and the lack of proper recycling standards. When I come out of my apartment, I do not have any proper options to recycle paper, to recycle glass, and that is simply or should be unheard of in the modern world. So just to recap, my organization here, we're very honored to be here, to have this opportunity to reach out to local NGOs. We're hoping to engage with local civil society and to work with the organizer of this together as we pursue the so-called triple bottom line, as we pursue social, environmental, and economic goals, or people, planet, and profit. And I will be happy to participate in this discussion. We will now turn over to the ladies.
Now I would like to introduce Olena Bekreniova, and she's been an executive director of the Bohdan Hawrylyshyn Charitable Foundation. And this foundation has been supporting the younger generation in Ukraine because Dr. Hawrylyshyn really believed that the young people of Ukraine are those who will be driving changes here and who can make a difference. Unfortunately, Bohdan Dmitrovich passed away last year. However, there is a huge legacy which he left behind with his ideas and his notions, which he shared with the Ukrainians, especially with the younger generation. And the foundation keeps on running. Olena has been doing that now for quite a while, and there are some ambitious projects that they are pursuing. And I've been an ardent supporter of this work, and also had personally known Bohdan Dmitrovich for the past 16 years. And he had a major positive impact on me personally as well, and on some of the activities that I was involved in at that time. So we're happy to have you here, Olena.
Thank you, Vasil. Thank you for not calling me Petra. But to be serious, it is a great honor for me to be here today, and it's my second opportunity to speak today as well. At the beginning, it was a real pleasure to remember about Dr. Hawrylyshyn, who really was one of the biggest inspirers and believers in Ukraine. He was persuaded that this country is worth more than it has now, because it has great natural resources, great human capital, and its potential is really immense. It is our task to use it properly and to develop our country. He believed that only the young people would be able to change the system which exists now, because they are not burdened with the Soviet point of view, and they are people of the new generation. They are professional, they are modern, they've seen the world, they've been abroad. And that's why Dr. Hawrylyshyn founded a private foundation in Kyiv, It is called Bohdan Hawrylyshyn Charitable Foundation, and it still exists. And its main program is called Young Generation Will Change Ukraine. So the activities of the program are evident, but the methodology we work is some kind of unique, because in our program we do not train leaders, we work with teams. Leaders immense in different situations. We also have a system approach, because these young people, to change Ukraine, they first go to one of the 6 European countries, the most developed ones. Dr. Hawrylyshyn believed that there are just 6 such countries in Europe. These are Austria, Germany, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, and also Poland, which is almost there, but it's a great example of reforming. And these countries could be characterized with the 4 main characteristics, like they have full political freedom, they have economic welfare for the whole population, so that there are no poor people. There are rich people, but no poor people there. Social justice, and of course coexistence with nature. So we gather groups, small teams of young people who go to these countries. They study the countries systematically, so how the political system works, the economic system, the social, and of course these green issues. And then they choose those issues and topics which could be appropriate to change Ukraine. Olena Bekreniova, one of the participants of the program as well, and thus we can see the progress made by our participants. They are leaders, they are those who change the country, who are continuously active. And what is also important about the program is that it is based on the responsibility, so that each participant of the program is responsible for everything he does during the program, because we as a foundation, we do not organize business meetings. The teams usually do it themselves. We do not control so much. It is their responsibility to be effective. And then after coming back from one of these countries, it is the responsibility of all the participants to use that knowledge they've received in those countries to change Ukraine. So to sum it up, we all have to understand and to feel responsibility for everything we do, because it is our responsibility to change the country, and the future of it really depends on us. Thank you.
Thank you, Olena. I would like to introduce Olena Bekreniova. She's currently a vice president of High Castle Capital, and I've known Olena for quite a while, and she's been very active in the financial industry, leading the financial services sector at the American Chamber of Commerce, and then later on being the CEO of the Warsaw Stock Exchange rep office in Kyiv. Currently, she's involved in some impact investments and supporting some sustainable projects and social entrepreneurship overall. I would like to kindly speak to us on this, on her experience on this.
Thank you, Vasil. First of all, I also wanted to thank Olena and Bohdan Hawrylyshyn who gave me this opportunity also to participate in the program. And I really hope that this program will continue, and there will be more supporters, more funders of this program in the future, because it's a really great opportunity for young people in Ukraine to see how the countries are developing and to learn more on the best practices, the best experience. My Swiss experience was really amazing, especially when you learn on how the cantons are built, how their federalization is going, how actually the responsibilities between different institutions are shared. So really great program, and I encourage everyone to support if you can. And I will speak on impact investment because it's my passion, and it's great potential for country. It's great potential for those investors who see themselves as sustainable. Because we all understand that by time every single organization who plan for a long, who play for a long, they definitely come to the conclusion that there should be some social responsibility. But it's social responsibility not in a way just a charity. It's social responsibility as building a value-added business models, and it's responsibility of making the sustainable, compliant, and well-organized business. So even corporate governance in a company, it's already like their social responsibility. Even paying taxes with no bribes and with no abuse. So it's also social responsibility, right? So generally, we on our platform, as I am vice president of High Castle Capital Investment Platform, which provide the variety of opportunities for investors to invest in different sectors. So we decided that we're gonna see on our platform was one of categories which we name as impact investments. So this opportunity for investors to find specific projects which are classified as high impact projects. And it's also opportunity for companies to be recognized not just by donors, but also by impact investors who see both making money by making good. So generally, it's very important to understand what are kind of impact investments. It can be passive, it can be active, and usually when you do active impact investments, so you pre-screen projects for their positive value. When you're doing the passive impact investments, so usually you go through the social responsible investments. It means screening for exclusion of negative consequences for environment, for society, for people. And generally, it's the easiest way to do, just to pre-screen for if there are no negative consequences. So it's to encourage investors and financial institutions, including banks, to look more for impact projects and actually to redistribute the capital in a way of real economy and social economy, which will impact the middle class, the growth of middle class. So it's important to find some stimulus, right? And to show that actually there are reputational incentives, and there are some probably tax incentives. So to get the reputational incentives, we need to create more benchmarks. We need to create more analytics and more different type of tools which will disclose this impact investments and actually impact of the investments. So what we can see in final. And it's also opportunity to, and on another way, it's very important to create also some tax benefits, which are operating currently for such investors in United Kingdom and in US. So any financial institutions who want to work in this way, who want to call themselves as ethical one, so they can go through the application process and apply for status of community development financial institutions. And they get tax benefits, tax reliefs, and so on. And of course, it's getting more interesting for investors, for depositors of these institutions to work with such organizations. And fortunately, in developed countries, this model is working, but it wouldn't work proper in such country as Ukraine, because we know that any tax stimulus, any tax benefits, they will go under some subjective selection, and in the end we will get probably more and more corruption by some benefits, right? So that's why when I was working on my PhD, which was in impact investments, I started to think how we can measure the impact investments, how we can measure the impact, and how we can, by creating the software, totally open system for analytics, how we actually can provide opportunity and system by which we can identify those financial institutions, those investors who are actually doing good. And that's why I developed the methodology by which you can rate financial institutions on the level of the impact investments or the impact. And generally to see who is doing well in a country, who is influencing the region, who are developing the small and medium enterprises, and we're gonna. I'm not gonna present the platform today. I will tell you a bit about the platform itself, and we hope to have this released soon. And the way how it will work, so it will be the platform which identifying aggregately the investments in which can be classified as impact, and it correlates with different regional development indicators. So when you overlap the investments, expenses, and lending in specific sectors and specific high impact products, so you then can correlate it with development index in specific region and a specific country. So that's get much easier with the development of technologies, of course, and it's what made me personally very happy, because from a PhD research, I turned to the software development manager, right? So because in banking system we see a trend for open APIs, for open banking, and actually more central banks are disclosing information through the APIs in aggregated measures. So it's not personified information, but but anyway you can see the picture in whole. And by this I want to just say we want to see more financial institutions, more banks, and more investors who want to participate to the platform, who want to disclose their impact and get a rating of their impact investments. And for this project, I definitely invite everyone as a side, from a side, as a partner, as financial institutions, a member of this impact measurement software, and also invite, of course, every community development organization who would be interested to submit their projects for impact investors as an offer. So thank you, and I will continue.
Дякую, Уляна.
So, you are aware 3 years ago there was a great push to the volunteer movement in Ukraine because Ukraine was not possible to respond to the aggression, and a lot of resources were supplied by materials, food, or even weapons were supplied by volunteers. When our veterans are coming back from the East, there are a lot of issues and problems that they're dealing with, and this was a push for establishment of NGOs that are dealing with these issues, and Oksana represents one of these organizations. Please.
I love my country. I was born in Chernigov region, but I love Uzhgorod, I love Kharkiv, I love Kyiv, I love my people.
As the moderator said, in the beginning of Russian aggression, there was a strong volunteer movement that was organized, and over the period of 3 years, the aggression is not over, and not that many organizations that were able to stay afloat and make necessary corrections to today. One of these organizations are ours. In 2014, when the Russian aggression started, on the initiative of the head of our organization, who is present here, Yuri Fedorovich, we organized the union of the anti-terrorist participants. In 2014, we helped people on the front. You know that the supplies to the army was not on the right level, and it was practically absent. And after 3 months of the rotation, after boys came back, that apart from material and technical aspects, there are also psychological problems. So when we went to the ministries, nobody wanted to listen to us, and even those who are considering themselves as great rehabilitologists of Ukraine, there was nothing about psychological rehabilitation. So through our initiative, we established the first Ukrainian rehabilitation center that exists till today, where we provide medical and psychological help. So over 800 people got help there. So if we take a pyramid of our rehabilitation help, we're dealing with the segment when the assistance was provided not only by psychologists but by doctors. This is not a high percentage in the rehabilitation segment, but apart from us, only 2 institutions are dealing with this professionally in Ukraine. So we established a veterans house. After the boys were treated, their bodies were treated and their head was fixed, it turns out that they have a problem of everyday living, employment. So 2 years ago we started it, and we're reformatting it now. Project as a veterans house. There are people there, veterans, that are in different living circumstances, where have no place to live, they have no job. It happens for a number of reasons. Somebody lost a family. Somebody did not get accepted back by the family, so we're reprofiling them. We're allowing them to live for free. We provide them with food and helping them to get employed. And this veterans house has become even a bigger project that is called a veterans club. And as of today, we have a concept of the veteran industry, where the provision of employment will not only an approach to the veterans, but there will be not only for 1 or 2 people we will establish a stop employment, but for a specific area of activities. So that's briefly about the work that the NGO, without any support from the state, only with the support of our friends, our people who are engaged, and our partners, that's what we did. So if you want to refer to our friends in the international community and say that It probably sounds funny if the corruption years are getting the money to fight corruption. Everybody knows about the numbers. For the first floor, there is $500 million for some reform, and the last floor there is a 150, and we have to review how we see the Ukrainian investment and start working with the specific people, specific institutions, in order for the very specific accountability. I think that with God's help, among the guests, if you read the Ukrainian history, Ukraine was never overcome. Ukrainian people can be patient for a long time, but they will never surrender 100% under anybody's yoke. So Ukrainians are those people who know how to, and I'm sure we shall overcome. Glory to Ukraine. Denis Kalachov, who is the head of the Association of the People's Volunteers of Ukraine, so he can Association of the People's Volunteers of Ukraine. I'm the director of this association, but I also have my own business. That's why I can give some time for these activities, especially from a point of view of this movement that was established in 2014 and needs support both from business and from the state. We're supporting Oksana, and her organization has done quite a bit for the ATO veterans and for displaced persons. So Oksana's organizations, Automaidan, they merge their efforts to provide help to that part of Ukrainian population that suffered due to these activities, and they were displaced persons, and helped our army at least to help to resist to the aggressor. We are in a situation where we have two aggressors, one external, one internal. The external one is Russia, and internal one is the result of the corruption history and the distortion of the governance in the state. And the NGOs is a key indicator of the development of civil society and readiness of the society to change. And since 2014 we have seen a lot, many people who you saw during Maidan, who you saw after 2014, they went to the government, and unfortunately the majority of them were disappointed that they tried to do something and systemic changes did not occur. So many people found their spot in some other niche. Somebody went to business, to the government service, and somebody established NGOs. They're working with the foreign organizations. At the moment, the Association of the People Volunteer are working on starting the co-working on the development of the NGO sector, and we're trying to establish the foundation so that our members have a possibility to cover those functions that they cannot perform. For instance, documentary exchange. We have in our tax service, NGOs have to report on quite a bit, and we need to help to those organizations who are still there and to get feedback from them how we can be useful. But these organizations, that there is a passionate individual who is responsible for this initiative. And the brightest example is Back Alive, Come Back Alive, Dana, but this person doesn't have a political ambition, but talking to those guys who have seen death day to day, and at the moment for the third year, I'm working in the volunteer movement, and I joined the Ministry of Defense on staffing on the development of reform project office. Then I went to the National Police, and not the highway police, but the criminal police, and many of us suffered from that police. Now I moved to the Association of the Arms Producers, and everybody finds the niche where they're useful. I will explain what I mean. People who see what can be changed, they don't go to the government offices because it ties you up. Whether you want it or not, you have to protect this government structure. And there are quite a few positive initiatives, and the objective for our NGO is to be a bridge between our country and other countries, so that we get not only negative information. The right message is we have the number of people who are ready to take upon themselves responsibility on the specific areas, and we're showing it on the example of our NGOs. And our NGOs is the staffing reserve that will join our government services. So the period from 2014 to 2016, unfortunately, it was the most passionate period, but we didn't have enough people that would help to develop and implement policies in the country. Monitoring what's happening over the period of 3 years, I'm sure that we will be moving ahead and the positive changes will take place. We already see it. We see how the small and mid-sized business is developing. Please analyze how restaurants, cafe, hotels, and how many businesses are opening up, not only in Kyiv but in the regions. But the most important part is that for people to be responsible for their own actions and actions of their loved ones. Everybody needs to pay taxes, because without taxes the country cannot exist. And this distorted system, financial model exists because we cannot get the internal cash flow, and that would change the situation. Let's overcome the political corruption. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the wonderful panel. The conference is only as good as its content, so everyone here is making it. Very much I'd like to actually sign something. It's I like to actually get deals done at conferences, and one of the main things that was discussed here is corporate social responsibility. For the last year, I've been working on a project together with our partners in America, FSVC, Financial Services Volunteer Corp. It's quite an interesting NGO of financial services volunteers. Has worked for the last 25 years with USAID. We've put in a petition through a good potential partner of ours for some subcontracts on US aid for the development of small and medium-sized enterprise, and most of the people on this panel actually I'll be looking forward to working with, and anyone else in the room that would like to join, I will read the following support memorandum that we could sign here today. BIGU, Business Incubator Group Ukraine, support memorandum for BIGU. Empire State Capital Partners, ESCP, is delighted that you have participated in the New Ukraine Investment Conference during May 17th, 18th, 2017. This conference serves as the launching pad for Empire State Capital Partners to create, together with its key partners, both in Ukraine and globally, the Business Incubator Group Ukraine BIGU. BIGU intends to support the development and expansion of small and medium-sized businesses, SMEs, and promote entrepreneurship in Ukraine. BIGU's vision is to develop a vibrant and robust SME sector in Ukraine that can contribute to maintaining economic stability and promoting sustainable economic growth that will lead to long-term investment and jobs creation. With your valuable support, BIGU intends to create a nationwide program that will help Ukrainian SMEs and entrepreneurs to become a driving force of Ukraine's future through the adaptation of new technologies and modern business management practices, attraction of impact investing, and exploration of new markets. BIGU's programs will lead to greater level of foreign and domestic investment, private sector growth, and poverty reduction. There has never been a more critical moment in Ukraine's history as the nation looks towards the future. Your decision to actively participate in rebuilding Ukraine's bright future starts today. We ask that you share your support with BIGU as we work to make Ukraine great again. Please provide your information and contact details below to indicate your interest and support BIGU, as well as your willingness to take an active part in Ukraine's rebuilding, restructuring, and revitalization. This memorandum is non-binding, but indicative of your interest to learn more about our work. We at BIGU intend to follow up with you in the near future to provide greater details on your mission and strategy. Your support today is critical to our plans to build a network which will help make our vision a reality. I would like to ask you to first sign this on behalf of your organization, and I'll pass that around. Yes. Okay, I will. No, I'm just looking for that first signature, and then David, will you come help us as well with the second one? Yes. Okay, so I'm gonna put this down over here afterwards and get everyone to sign up.
I just said for the translator, we're a Washington-based international
development
organization, and we're also very happy to participate in supporting this effort.
Okay, so I'm going to get a few copies going here. Now, everyone, please take turns signing these papers. We'll pass them around. But in the meantime, also, while this is happening, I'd like to say a few words of how the program is going to work. For instance, Oksana's organization works with veterans. So we're going to be working on veteran entrepreneurship, helping veterans come back, rehabilitate, and instead of not being able to find a job, being able to create one and create one for the fellow veterans. Also with Olena, we were talking about impact investing and putting that into this program. With Thomson Reuters, we're exploring having each office potentially have the programs that they have, especially this one, and also the terminals to be able to do business plans for entrepreneurs. We're going to do female entrepreneurships. Volunteers with this gentleman and his program. And also, big thing is sport. So, Alexei, if you could come up. Встань, пожалуйста. Презентацию подготовил? Okay. So, Alexei is going to do a presentation. He runs mixed martial arts group. He's a fighter, but he also helps teach children for free.
Please tell us what you're doing and how it has to do with the... I'm glad to greet everybody. U.S. In U.S. and 85% are doing sports. In Ukraine, only 15% are Western friends. The market is there. It's a depressive market for sports because there is no investment into sports. Why it's important and why emphasis is on children, on the younger generation. And the problem, I fully agree with you, Oksana, that children are without dads and they don't get necessary attention. I would like to concentrate on the investments of our Western friends. They look more carefully whom to support. Either the state with the fake organizations who can do or people who are doing something. I would like to make a presentation of our program as a free sports for children from the Strong Nation Fund. The first stage is the 10 free clubs in 10 districts in Kyiv, 23 regions, Crimea too. What we're doing, we're opening up a sports clubs where children are doing sports for free. This is a synthesis of social responsibility plus business. So it has to be self-sustained. During the day, children are doing sports for free. The trainers that are training the children in the evening, and they have a commercial group, and they don't pay rent for this, and so the trainers that are those who cannot train in the evening, they get the salary, and then the money that we get, we have 3 playgrounds, soccer field, volleyball field, and we don't have any financing from the state. And the budgets of the Ministry of Sports and to the ultimate consumers, nothing gets to the children. So we all know why it is. It gets stuck on a way. So we're doing our presentation, the second stage. The first club is open in the Khortytsa district. We have so far 70 children. In Dnipro club, 200 children will be doing sports, and we have participated. The participation budget where the state has certain amount of money, and the social project, we won 1 million hryvnia to repair these premises, but it's not enough to buy the equipment, so we are doing the fundraising, and we're looking for partners, and we have a full informational support. If the person does something good, people need to know about it, and we need to say that there is a person who helps us, and so that social responsibility will awake. And we dealt with the repair cooperating with the Kyiv city administration, we were able to motivate them, and so that we asked them to help us with the repair. We have the issue with the equipment. We need to find $20,000. I don't know where we will find them, but in September, October, we will open up. Next project is running to help. At the moment, we have in Kyiv, in 10 districts, we have 14 locations. There was a flash mob Bila Tserkva, Dnipro and Kyiv, and 10 cities will participate in June. The minimization, everything is done at the park, school stadiums. We're also going to apply for a participatory budget in order to improve these locations, having neon lights there, and have the night run project. So we're improving the sports infrastructure, where at each location there is a trainer. They all have sports masters, and one of our trainers who is for a year is training our children, and I would like to greet this as a great work. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk about our initiative and our project that we're implementing, and we would be happy so that we get partners in our project. Thank you. Alexei, thank you very much. You're expanding, Sergey. Please get up. We have a franchise. Ternopil is joining you. Hello, everybody. Ternopil is the heart of the Western Ukraine because geographically. So it used to be a sports city because there were Olympic champions and champions of Europe and the world, and the wrestling was very popular, rowing, gymnastics, fencing. But these times, the sports started to decline. There's no financing, and there's a great progress in the restaurant industry, and the sports are dying. So the fitness centers are very fashionable, and they are purely workout for the individual. There is no popular development for sports because there is no financial support. And secondly, all the famous sportsmen and women, they are all either from middle class families or poor families. Alexei has taken a very good direction because it's a very good development. It's a mass sport for popularization of the Olympic sports, which are necessary to develop. For instance, if we take our city, as rowing. It's basically was destroyed, and there is no base, there is no famous sports people. Very simple example is that we had a champion of Ukraine. They went to they went to be in Moldova because they get a high salary. We don't have support for that. And my father was one of the founders of he helped the champion of Europe to become a champion, and dozens of masters of sports, but over 15 years it's not happening, and I would like to establish a support for Olympic sports and to provide them with a very progressive push. This is our future, and to represent Ukraine in international arena. Thank you very much. All over the country, in each region there is a lot of things to develop. We have to start with the youth. This is sports, this is the healthy lifestyle, and these are those foundations that would allow for development of business and do other things correctly. And because I have a 4-year-old boy, and this is our future, and we start with children, with sports, with health, economic health, entrepreneurship, and social responsibility. Thank you very much to everybody. I will sign this as well. And we're starting the BIGU.